In this video, we will learn about the two remaining types of mechanical targets, rotary and rail targets. In the previous videos we only worked with falling targets. Mechanical targets are those that respond to hits and can be activated or deactivated by an external signal or behavior settings. In the game, in addition to mechanical targets, there are simple targets, physical and destructible. You will learn about them in the following videos. First, let's set up the scene, remove the default target and move the checkpoint to the right to make room for the second checkpoint. Turning targets are similar to falling targets except that they are placed on vertical surfaces instead of on the floor. To place a rotating target, we need a large object. We will use tall wooden boxes. Let's place 3 boxes for 6 targets. Done. Fine. Let's set up targets. Rotary targets consist of a mount with a mechanism, and a plate with the target itself. The target mount is installed on the rear side of the obstacle so that when rotated 180 degrees, when the target is completely hidden behind the obstacle. You may notice that snapping is enabled when placing targets. The targets move discreetly. This is useful for placing targets at the same height and distance from the edge of an obstacle. To disable snapping, hold down the control key. Six targets of 2-3 types are available in the workshop. For each type there are 2 targets, turning left and right. Done, the targets are set. Let's see how they look from the checkpoint position. It will be better to lower the 2 targets and move the blue boxes closer. You may notice that the targets become children of the object they are attached to. You can move or delete the object and the targets will move or be deleted with it. Let's check how the targets look from the checkpoint position. It would be better to move a little more. Now everything is fine. Now let's create a simple gameplay. Let's make the checkpoint activate the first target. And then the rest of the targets activate each other. Done. Now let's make all targets disabled by default. You can see that the targets intersect when folded. It doesn't look very pretty, but it won't cause problems since the targets are not physical. Let's move the starting point closer to the checkpoint, save the level and start testing. We see that when activated, the targets turn towards us from a hidden state, and when destroyed, they hide back. However, aiming with a service pistol at such a distance becomes difficult. Let's try to take something sporty with an optical sight. In the previous videos, we only fired the default Smith & Wesson MP pistol. You can select another weapon by pressing the B key. Let's choose the famous Desert Eagle. Now let's go to the customization screen. A Leupold 2X optical sight is available for the standard barrel. Let's try it out. Now it is much easier for us to aim and hit the target's head. By the way, the muzzle energy of the Desert Eagle is 4 times greater than that of the Smith & Wesson, which is why strong targets are destroyed with one hit. Let's see what other optical sights can be installed on the Desert Eagle. To access all compatible scopes, we need to install a barrel with an integrated Picatinny rail. Let's choose a scope with a magnification of 2.5. By the way, in the workshop you have access to all weapons and accessories without having to buy them. This sight is interesting in that the reticle has a red backlight. This can be useful in dark locations. To switch reticle or turn on the backlight, press the Tab key. Yes, now it is much more convenient to aim. We just tested the turning targets. By the way, one more difference from falling targets is that rotary targets are not visible when folded. The player will only see the target when it is activated. Now we will add a checkpoint and build a real gameplay with moving targets. As in the previous examples, we need to create a new checkpoint, move the starting point to it and disable the previous one. Moving targets need a rail object to move. The workshop has 2 sets of rails of different lengths and heights. When created, a new rail is automatically snapped to an existing one if one is nearby. At the ends of the rails there are bumpers to limit the movement of the targets. When joining the rails to each other, the bumpers between them are removed. Now we will put a target on the rail. The target snaps to special points on the rail. The moving target has special settings. The first setting is the run option. When turned on, the target starts to move along the rail to the bumper, bounces and goes in the opposite direction, and so on. The second setting is the movement speed. It's easy to see that the faster the target moves, the harder it is to hit. The third setting is the sticking time of the target when it hits the bumper. The fourth setting is the maximum number of hits on the bumpers. If the target is not destroyed before, it is deactivated. Now we will disable the default target and bind it to the checkpoint. For testing, let's choose a more suitable weapon. Let's take a sports pistol SIG P226 X-Five. As expected, when destroyed, the target falls and stops. Let's set up the second row of targets. You can put several targets on one rail. Then they will collide and bounce off each other. Let's make a long rail and put 3 targets on it. We will choose a different skin for this row of targets. Then we will enable target movement and disable it by default. Now clone it to get 3 targets. And last but not least, we will set different target speeds to make them behave more unpredictably. Now we will bind new targets to the first one. Let's see what happened. Looks good. Rails can be placed at different angles. A good result can be obtained by setting them diagonally. Let's make a third row of targets on 2 rails set at 45 degrees. Let's put 1 target on each. As with the previous ones, we will enable motion and disable it by default. And now let's change the type of target behavior, set the target to rise and fall on its own until it is destroyed. Set the intervals of activity and inactivity to 1 second. Using the method from the previous videos, we will activate a new row of targets using a relay, so that the new row is activated only when all the targets of the previous one are destroyed. Since there are 3 targets, it is necessary to set the value of the accumulator to 3 as well. And the last trick, we will put a phase shift on one of the targets so that the targets behave asynchronously. Let's also speed up the targets a bit for a faster game. And we will reduce the speed of the targets from the second row. Let's see what we got. The result is interesting and even challenging. Let's make the last row of targets. The second type of moving targets can run on rails aimed at the player. Thus, the target moves towards the player from the far end of the shooting range and the player has a limited time to destroy the target. Let's start by creating 2 long rails. Then we put 1 target on each. From a distance, the targets will look quite dim, so we will turn on the optional lamps. Now let's set the maximum number of bumps to 2 so that the targets travel forward, backward, and then stop. Let's finish the settings and increase the maximum number of hit points so that in order to destroy the target, it needs to be hit 10 times. Note, 1 hit with a 9x19 bullet equals 10 hit points. To activate the last row, we will use a relay with an accumulator value of 2. Now let's bind the targets of the third row to the relay, not forgetting to change the signal sending to when destroyed, otherwise the signal will be sent when the target is deactivated on its own. Let's improve our weapons for serious work. On the frame we will install an adapter with a Picatinny rail, a compensator on the barrel and a red dot sight. Let's test the final version. Don't forget that we need a full magazine to destroy the last 2 targets. To destroy the right target, we had to make 10 shots. And we were lucky to destroy the left one from 1, hitting the head. That's all for today. Thank you for watching.